Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. I just looked and in my screen I can see I've got a bowl behind me. That was left over from the weekend. It's one of the ones from the van. So, good evening and welcome to another Q&A, NTX Q&A. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We've got some fantastic things coming up. I wrote down, somebody said, can we do something at a weekend? I went, well, we've got a wreck diving in Norfolk this weekend. Then we're off to Hodge Close or something up near up north England. Then we've got Late Fest, which is down in Cornwall. So if anyone wants to come down and join us for 3 or 4 days down in Cornwall, followed by the Dive Off, which is our annual competition down in Vobster on the 11th, 12th and 13th of September. It's been running for 14 years now, so you guys are welcome to join us. Let us know. Limited numbers, obviously, because of the situation. But, yeah, a brilliant weekend for everybody who wants to come along. It's quite interesting, actually. And I think we should really talk about it a little bit before we go any further. So No Tanks, as you may or may not know, is based on progression, freediving progression. That's all we're interested in. And the biggest obstacle to progression is numbers. As soon as you put numbers in, it creates... all the other learning from a dive collapses down, and it's kind of so. If you want to learn, you don't have numbers. As long as you have, as soon as you have a number, the learning goes away. It's just the way the human brain works. But equally well, you start putting your focus on numbers by thinking, I want to go as long as I did yesterday, or deeper than I did, or deeper than Fred. And in fact, numbers, the only purpose of numbers is to show off. The only possible use for numbers are to tell somebody else that you can go deeper than them, or in the pub, I can dive this deep. For learning, they have no benefit at all. So how do we run a competition down in Vobster, 11th, 12th, 13th without numbers? Well, we have the best dive. So everybody who competes has a vote, and they vote on the best dive, which encourages people to find out what other people were trying to do, what their objectives were, what they've done before, and what would constitute a good dive for them. So obviously we're all chatting, it's encouraging people to chat, find out about people, and then we can objectively look at a dive and say, is that a good dive for them? So if a senior, does a shallow diving, 4-meter dive, and nails it perfect, the duck dive, the countdown, the preparation is perfect, the duck dive is absolutely on point, the finning is gorgeous, and they do a beautiful turn and come back, they're not going to win because 4 meters is not a challenge to them. But if a beginner, we've had several people who've won the competition with dives under 10 meters deep because they've been working towards it for a time, or there was something that they had to do to get to that point on that day. And that's progression, and that's what we encourage. So all the prizes go to the best dive. That's only one of the competitions, of course. We've got to have 4 competitions at Dive Off. So we have Almost IATA, as we call it. We have, and we do have international IATA judges judging the dive. But we also feel that if you're a newbie, we don't want to be giving you a red card if you touch the rope twice, or if you do some sort of technical thing that's slightly wrong. So we call it Almost IATA because we want to encourage people to come along and enjoy the event rather than worrying about the details. So we have that. We also have this year we're going to have team guesstomostatic rather than team statics, because team statics got a little bit dangerous. And we have the turns comp and then guess your depth. And guess your depth is brilliant. So you strap a computer to your back. Somebody gives you a depth, a random depth that's set for you, specifically you, and you have to go down and try and stop at that depth. You can't use the rope. You have to swim down, come back, and guess your depth. And we get 2 or 3 people every year who get within 20 centimeters of their depth. So that much, and the winner's usually 10 centimeters. We haven't yet had somebody who's come back spot on yet, and we've been doing it 14 years. Okay, so without further ado, we've got some questions coming in. Actually, somebody actually asked me that at the weekend about a competition, and I said I would include it. So I'm not just kind of going on about the competition. They said, well, how can you have a competition without numbers? And so that's kind of why I was telling you. So Julian's actually followed on from that and said, I know numbers aren't important, but is there any correlation between depth in open water and distance in the pool? Yes and no. Some cases there are. So if you're a beginner, there's no correlation, because the reason you come up is probably not due to breath hold in a depth comp. If you're a beginner, you're going to turn at the point where there's equalization issue or tension issue. Usually tension, equalization doesn't really come into it. If you're over 9 meters, 16 meters, then equalization doesn't come into it really. If you're a beginner, so the reason you turn is not breath hold, and in the swim it may be breath hold. So the reasons why you stop when you're a beginner is different from depth from distance. When you're in an intermediate, then you have got a good grasp of most of the skills. Obviously, if you've spent your entire life in a pool, then you're not going to be as good in the depth. If you spent all the time doing depth, then you're not going to be, and there's going to be a disparity in your skill level, which means there's not going to be a correlation. But just let's presume you've got somebody who does quite a lot of pool training, quite a lot of open water training. When they become an intermediate, then yes, there will be a correlation between it. It does change depending on what discipline you're talking about. But the world record dives are about the same sort of time, 4 minutes, whether they're going down or whether they're going along. Give or take, they're obviously extended to a little bit. But there's not. What I'm saying is, there's not. Distance isn't 8 meters and depth is 88 minutes, and distance is like 3 minutes. They're all about the same sort of time. So, in the intermediate levels, there will be a correlation. But I wouldn't really be too set on it. If I said, yes, if you can do this distance in the pool, then you should be able to do this depth, because again, you are setting yourself a target or that maybe it's going to distract you from the objective of having a nice dive. You might do the deepest dive you've ever done, might be beautiful, you'll come up and you go, oh yeah, but it's not as long as what I was expecting to do because I can do such and such in the pool. So there is a correlation, there will be a kind of similarity, but it depends. And then later on, when you become a senior, it will be where you focus on, and it's mastering those skills which makes a difference. Okay, so yes and no is the answer to that. Julian's just going for it. Bam! So some people find it easier diving in open water than open pool. That's a statement. Yes, they do. Why is that? Well, that's just such a really interesting but open-ended question. So some people may find it interesting. Some people may find it easier in open water from a pool. But are they diving on a line? Are they diving on the reef? If it's on the reef, they might just enjoy being on a reef. They might find it easier diving on a reef than in a swimming pool because they want to see fish. They might dive on a rope because that's, for me, and I would say 80%, 90% of free divers being at depth is why we free dive. Not deep, but being at depth, not being at 2 meters. Yeah, just being under the ocean or in a lake where there's you are essentially alone. So for me, I love that. I love that feeling. Equally well, for me, it's freefall. I want to freefall as fast as I can, as fast as I mean, like, I'll go on a sled just to go faster. I just want to go fast down. That's it. Which I can't do in a pool. So, we go to some of the deep pools, and if you've ever been to a deep pool with me, I will test the sled in Nemo. And it's a 3-person sled, and I'll test it because I want to go to the bottom as quick as possible. But, let's kind of cross over there. Okay, so Kiri, when you feel yourself become negatively buoyant, should you always stop pulling, finning and sink, or there is reasons why you should continue moving? Well, I've just answered that. I want to go as fast as possible. So I will always hit the glide and fin again. I will always hit the glide and pull again, at least once or twice. So if I'm personally, and this is a personal opinion, but the fact that I have a reason why I would continue pulling kind of answers your question. If there's one, then there's going to be lots of reasons. Okay. But for me, I'll be pulling. I love pulling. Pulling's the best because I've got no fins on, and when I hit the sink position, the free fall position, I haven't got the fins aren't distracting me. I haven't said that. Monofin is pretty cool to sink in. Anyway, free falling. So as I hit that, I love the fact that I'm pulling and my hands, and I'm going, I don't need to pull. I can feel it. I can sense the rope, but that's never fast enough for me. So I'll always give another one, and usually I'll keep one hand out for alignment. So if you're monofinning, you're going to be stay in position a little while before breaking form, because your free fall's not going to be that good unless free fall's not going to be that fast. So you want to stay in basic position to get streamlined, to get that speed up, and then you break position. And I'll do the same in free immersion. I'll kind of keep myself aligned with my hand rather than my head until I'm a little bit faster. Probably the right free fall speed, and I'll give another pull to go even faster. So there is a good reason for pulling and think, and the other thing is, if you are going reasonably deep, there's a reason why you're turning. Once you've developed and mastered the basic skills, and you're moving into an intermediate level, then you've got the skills. Then there's a reason for why you're turning. So you may find that you want to get to the bottom quick to do some sort of maneuver, whether it's a swim through, whether it's a photograph, or whether it's taking a photograph or being in the photograph, either way, or whatever it is. So you may find you hit the free fall and you want to go a little bit quicker. Having said that, the efficiency, the O2 efficiency you have from free fall is so significantly better than pulling or finning. There has to be a very good excuse to keep finning rather than not. Because as soon as especially if you're intermediate, you've done enough dives, your body's used to it, you've got that neurological programming in place, that when you get to that free fall section, poof, you relax into it, soften into it, your heart rate and will automatically drop. So it's so important to have a free fall if you can have it. As I say, in my case, I'll be doing 1, possibly 2 pulls more. But even those 2 pulls, I'm just not keeping pulling. That I pull, I'm enjoying. I'm kind of free falling, and half free falling maybe before pulling that one. But all the time I'm going to do it. Here I come. Bam! Preparing my subconscious for that point where poof, I can hit the glide and just sink. And at that point, I know my brain switches off. I know my oxygen consumption just drops through the roof. So when you become negatively buoyant, so your question is, when you feel yourself become negatively buoyant, should you always stop pulling and filling? Kind of yes, you should, but it depends on why you're doing a dive. Okay, so there are reasons why you could continue pulling, but personally, if there's a possibility of a free fall, then you should take it. It's like doing the oxymoron, or the oxymorons in the pool. Everybody gets it, no matter whether they're a beginner, whether they're a senior. Doing a 30-second static at the beginning, the dive feels so much more beautiful, relaxed and efficient. If you can get that kind of static in the middle of a dive in freefall, then you should take it. Okay, so I had a message through from somebody in the week. Let me just have a look. I can't remember what it was. It was at the end of last week, and I thought I won't. So it's after last week. I got sent this message because we were talking about diaphragm flexibility last week, and does it affect when the contractions come in, and it doesn't. And there's a follow-up question. Somebody said, why is it that as children, we naturally breathe using the diaphragm, but as adults, we tend to breathe with the intercostal muscles? Okay, so beautiful question. And I was teaching freediving for a good 15 years before I found out the answer. I was kind of happy not knowing the answer. It didn't matter. But if you ever see kids playing, they'll be running around, and their bellies will be going in and out as they're running around. And then when we're adults, we breathe with the chest. You often see it when people say you're in a tight space and breathe in, and they kind of like it's all the chest. Okay, so why do kids breathe with the diaphragm, which is the correct way to breathe? Diaphragmatic breathing, much healthier for us. It's really, really odd trying to do it all then, but that's the proper way to breathe. Is the diaphragm with the chest is really bad. Why do we switch over about the age, early teens, 12, 14 years old? Do we change over from belly breathing to chest breathing? And I just thought it was a sense of awareness of ourselves. Excuse me. And mitigated sponsorship. It's not. They didn't even give me that cup. They gave it to somebody else, and somebody else had one already and said, "Hey Marcus, do you want this Sunto cup?" So they used to sponsor us. They don't want to sponsor us anymore. So 15 years, I was quite happy not knowing why we switch over from belly breathing to chest breathing at kind of puberty. But then I found out that when you're younger, and it's not actually 12, 14, it's actually much younger than that. It's between 8 and 10. And I found this out as well, and that's because the bones aren't fully formed, and they're not very strong. So it's not very easy for the muscles to work against the bones, which are still effectively soft, especially where they haven't joined up completely. So as young kids, up to the age of 8, you breathe with the diaphragm because it doesn't need to work off the bones as much. So there you go. Ta-da! And somebody told me this, which was during a foundation course actually, because I said I don't know why it is, but as kids, and they said I know why, and there you go. So, curious as oh gosh, I miss my oxy so much. Well, maybe you should come along to the pool session next Tuesday, which is the 25th. The first no tank session is back on down in Brighton. It's actually Hove on the 25th. If you want to come along, you have to pre-book, so let us know. Julian, another question from Julian. How long should I wait after I've eaten before I dive? Does it make any difference? Yes. Didn't your mother ever tell you that if you eat before you swim, you will die? And I've never worked out why that is. But anyway, you get indigestion and you'll die or something like that. But no. Yes, it makes a huge difference. When we're freediving, we are trying to be efficient with the oxygen in our body. And if we eat, all the blood goes to your stomach and starts processing the food. So all the blood's down there doing its business and we haven't really got excess to be doing freediving. So we really, really want to be careful about when we eat and dive. But having said that, in most cases, we're just training. So in most cases, it affects the breath hold, but not in a negative way. It just makes them harder because your blood's trying to do several things. Obviously, if you eat a massive meal like 10 minutes before you dive, you're just going to feel bloated and just lethargic and you're not going to be able to train, but that's the same with everything. So, you've got to be sensible. So an hour before, giving yourself an hour to digest is sensible. 2 hours is what we suggest to really kind of have a good digestion time, because your breath holds will suffer. Even 2 hours before, if you have a meal, even a light meal, 2 hours before, your breath holds will suffer. Okay? Your body's trying to get the nutrients out of it, but equally well, they haven't had time to get around your body. So if you really want to have the best dives, 4 hours. 4 hours between a light meal and your dive. Maybe a banana or something. Bananas are fantastic, super foods for athletes. 2 hours before, you're good to go. Right? Having said that, how long's your dive session? Now, most people will, if you kind of ask them or go through the forums, they'll be talking about competition diving. Yeah, where you have one dive and you know exactly when it is and you can plan around it. Most people will say that when asked, but actually 90% of freedivers are not competitive freedivers, and even the competitive freedivers, 90% of the time they're not competing, they're training. Yeah? So even 95% of the time, it's probably more than that. So you've got under 90% of freedivers aren't competitive, so you've got 10%, and 90% of them, or 95% of the time, they are not competing, they're training. So the answers that most people give you about eating are wrong. So that 1% of the time when you are competing, yes, you can really work your diet out, and you can work your diet out for several days before your single dive. Most people, however, are going in the water and playing around for maybe 2 hours. Right? You will be knackered. If you dive in and quite a lot of dives, active, and burning up energy, you may run out of energy during the dive session. So you may have to eat. Right? Again, a banana at the beginning of the session, or a banana before you get in, or cake, or some unmitigated sugar is going to give you. Sorry, let's try it again. A banana before you dive will be beautiful. It's got quite a lot of sugar in, quite a lot of low burn sugar. So banana just before you dive will last you 2 hours. You'll be fine. If you have a cake before you go, just refined sugar, you get a nice spike, and then you're going to crash in the second half of the dive. If you time it right, you might be able to kind of eke that crash out. So it depends on what you're going to do. So the question was, how long should I wait after having eaten before I dive? Depends what you're doing. If you're going to go in open water where you have to do a long swim out there, then you're going to do a 2 hour session diving through stuff, and then have to swim back. You need energy for the whole time. So I would not eat a Christmas lunch before doing it, but I'd have a banana just before the dive. Usually we say 2 hours before, to be sure. 4 hours before a big meal is plenty. If you're competing, most of the time, most people who are competing, the food, 4 hours is enough. Any more than that, won't be affecting their dive. It'll be their technique that's affecting their dive much more than the diet. But if you get to the point where you are high enough in your skill levels that food is playing a part, you should know how your diet should be planned out for maybe 2 days before the dive, because you might as well. So 99% of the time, think about your whole session and eat sensibly for that. Whew. Okay, so another question we got 5 minutes. So another question we had at the weekend, which somebody asked me, was about sleds, and they said sleds, and how can you use a sled safely? Surely using sleds is about going super deeper than you can ever imagine, and it's just a weird kind of fallacy that's been built up over many years. But we use sleds for a safety system. You got 2 parts to a sled. You got the going down and you got the coming up. So going down, we use it for safety. If somebody's nervous, if somebody has got something they want to work on at a depth, whether it's 10 meters, 20 meters, or 50 meters, you can get there easily, relaxed, not using any energy, and then spend some good quality time there. You can double the amount of time, treble the amount of time you got at the bottom, and still fin up or pull up, or whatever kind of way you're going to come back up. So that's just the down part. Equally well, when we were diving on Perseus, for instance, HMS Perseus, which is sitting quite deep, Second World War submarine that was sunk just off the south coast of Kefalonia in Greece, in the Ionian Islands. We dive it, and I don't want to be swimming down there to whatever the depth is, plus 50 meters, whatever, and be there and be knackered. I want to be there and take some photographs, or kind of be, help somebody else be there and watch them, and I don't want to be spinning down there and be knackered. So we use a sled to make that descent super easy. Obviously, coming back on a sled is also easy. So it's not necessarily quicker, but it's easier. So you're going to make the safety margin much bigger. You've done the dive, you've done whatever you're going to do, and then getting a free ride back, it's going to be a lot easier and less taxing on the body than have to fin back, especially at the end of a breath hold. So the safety margins are increased. This can be abused. People can go, well, if I can go, if the safety margins are bigger, then I can use this sled to go deeper. I can use this sled to go longer than I can comfortably do. Or I can come back easier, so therefore I can go deeper than I can comfortably swim back. And this is, for us, a dangerous kind of line that you cross over, because at that point you're relying on the sled to bring you back, which is a different thing from going somewhere that you know you can get to, finning, you're just making it easier, and know you can come back from, finning, but you're just making it easier. Yeah. So having a sled allows you to increase the safety margins, as long as you stay within the dives that you can do without the sled. Yeah. So but this is the same with everything. If you have a piece of equipment, then you can use it for good or evil. No, you can use it for good, to train, to increase the safety, or you can use it to push the envelope. And we don't push the envelope in that kind of way. Because if the sled is the only way you can get back from a certain depth, then you need another safety system in there in case that fails, in case the system fails. That's it. So somebody was asking about safety and sleds. Depends how it's used. And in no tanks we have you have a driving license. We have a 3-level driving license. So you learn how to drive, being driven, anybody can be driven as long as you've got the correct level driver. So you've got beginner driver, intermediate, and an instructor level driver, and they can do different things. As long as you've got an experienced driver who's watching as you go down, any tension, you stop the sled, and it's super interesting to see where people's tension comes when you're driving a sled, and you look across and go, see the tension in the neck, the eyes, the shoulders, the elbow, or even the hips. In fact, even from the surface, if you see a sled going down, you can see tension because it makes the sled move differently. So you can see the tension and the effects of it. So yeah, we have 3 levels of driver, and levels of people going on it for different things. And again, we have this. We thought it through. We've been using it. We've been using sled for training. First, we called it the Shed Sled, and it was written up in Freediver magazine back in 2003. So it's a sled that fits into kind of a small bag, so you can carry on luggage. Using physics, which I used to know a little bit about, not so much now, but using physics to make it efficient and work. So we've been using it for 18 years now with great effect. And did I mention sleds are the most fun you'll ever have freediving? They are so fun. I don't know why it's so much fun. It's just so much fun. And there you go. So that's it. That's the end of the session. If you have any more questions, then please message me, Facebook, or email me, mig@notanks.com. We've got loads of things happening. Looking at the calendar, which is above the screen, which is why I'm kind of gazing off into the distance. We have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 next month and a half. Every weekend we've got dives happening, including the trips to Greece and dive off. Please sign up for the dive off. You won't regret it. It is amazing. Every newbie gets a senior to look after them. Every senior gets a newbie to look after. Everybody gets a dive. Everybody gets a vote. Everybody, can order pizza at the party, and it's fun. So, see you later. And yeah.
Sign up on notanks.com for the dive off.
Oh yeah. By the way, if you want to come to the dive off, you can sign up. It's on Facebook on the No Tanks group. There's a sign-in sheet, but it's equally well on the website, on the calendar. The calendar's now up to date for the next few weeks, so you can sign up on there. Come along to the dive off at Vobster. Everybody's welcome. Thank you very much. Ciao ciao.